everyone, welcome to another episode of Spectator Sports. I'm your host Sebastian Fonseca, and wow, we just had a crazy Sunday of 2 Game 7 routes. I'm actually recording this during the Mavs annihilation of the Phoenix Suns. Right now they're up 121-76 with about a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, but I think it's safe to say that they got this one in the bag. There's a bunch of other things I wanted to talk about. There was the Bucks losing to Boston earlier today, and we're going to preview the conference finals matchups and also get into a little soccer too. The FA Cup final was over this past weekend, and the Premier League title race is still going to go to the last week, so stay tuned. So like I said earlier, Dallas is absolutely annihilating Phoenix right now. They went into halftime of 57-27, and Luka Doncic put on an absolute show and matched the Phoenix Suns' total output by himself. Something kind of like what Kobe did in 2006, where he outscored the entire Dallas Mavericks team through 3 quarters. I just gotta say, after all the trash talk that's been going back and forth, especially between him and Devin Booker, Luka really backed it up. He was called out for, his lack of defense on the first 2 games, and every time this series went one way, the home team had a distinct advantage. In the first 2 games, Phoenix won by double digits, and then Dallas was able to reiterate that and have a couple double-digit wins of their own. But in this game, they started off hot and they didn't stop at all. Luka provided the early scoring, and then Spencer Dinwiddie, once he got subbed in, kept on scoring as well. He had about 3 early triples in the first quarter, and that really set the tone going forward. You just felt like Phoenix was maybe going to have a run in them, but once that lead got past 20, 25, I think that was it. The announcer Kenny Harlan actually mentioned something kind of interesting when Chris Paul, who just recently turned 37, which was during this series, he's played like actual trash since his 37th birthday, and he's since seen that 2-0 lead evaporate, and he's just been a shell of himself. I don't know what the reports are going to be coming forward, if he's going to have like some kind of underlying injury or whatever. We're going to see that maybe in the next coming days. But wow, he's not been well. First of all, he's point guard. He's a point guard, and just not playing smart. In Game 4, he fouled out, which is very unlike Chris Paul. We could maybe say the calls were kind of soft, but I think a lot of these calls, at least in Game 4, were a lot of ticky-tack fouls that he unnecessarily reached over and put himself in harm's way, never got into a rhythm of it. And Booker did have a good game in Game 5, but the last game in Game 6, he wasn't really the most efficient, and today he struggled mightily from the field. At one point, the big 3 of Phoenix, DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul, actually had 0 field goals combined until about the midway point of the second quarter, which is, in a Game 7, on your home court, it's just not going to get the job done. But credit to the Mavericks, especially head coach Jason Kidd. He really seems to get the most out of his guys. I think you'll see a bit where he was coaching defense really actively, getting everybody to man up to their roles and switch, guard the ball efficiently. And in his first year, he's already taken the Mavericks to the conference finals. They haven't won a playoff series since they won their championship in 2011, so this is making huge strides since replacing Rick Carlisle, and now they're setting up a matchup with the Golden State Warriors. And to transition to the other West semifinal matchup, the Golden State Warriors just beat the Memphis Grizzlies 4-2. It was a really unfortunate end to what was a nice series on paper. At the time of my last recording, Ja Morant just went down with an injury. I didn't know at the time how serious it was, and it turns out that he unfortunately suffered a bone bruise and he was deemed out for the rest of the playoffs. And with that, it kind of killed the Grizzlies' chances of really making any noise in this series. They did play quite admirably in game 4 and 5, especially game 5. They actually won by about, they were up 50 at one point actually, and they won by such a healthy margin, which was no job, but again, it was at home, so the role players would be at least somewhat comfortable. And they actually did have game 4, what you could say, in the bag, but unfortunately, the youth of the Memphis Grizzlies kind of pulled out again, where they didn't really understand how to close ball games, and they struggled to do so. So unfortunately, they lost that lead, and guys like Klay Thompson, Steph Curry were able to make those really clutch offensive plays, and then Draymond put up a hell of a block on Jaren Jackson, and that really sealed the deal for Golden State, taking a 3-1 series lead at that point. My concerns are for Golden State is that they seem to play down to their opponents. This has been a thing for quite a while in the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green era, and even when KD was with the Warriors, they seem to play down to their opponents, where they just have bad days at the office and they don't really seem too into it. Of course, it is a 7-game series, and you have to lose 4 times to be eliminated. So I would be really skeptical of them losing 4 games, but hey, anything's possible, of course. It seems like there's a scuffle right now. The Dallas Mavericks just closed out the series now officially, 4-3, and definitely Phoenix is not too happy about it right now. They just got blown out 123-90, but hey, they were down 40 at one point, if even more. But now going to the Eastern Conference, we had a game 7 today between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics, and this was another really good series. I would even say it was better than the Suns and Mavericks. The Celtics really got amazing contributions from unlikely role players. Peyton Pritchard and especially Grant Williams. He made 7 3-pointers today and actually was the leading scorer for Boston, and that really kind of put the game on ice early on in the third quarter. Giannis was just simply too gassed to really have any more load to carry and bring Milwaukee back into this game. They started off pretty well early on. They even had a double-digit lead, but towards the beginning of the second quarter was when things started to really fall towards the Celtics' way. I always think it's big in games when you close out quarters, and when the Celtics made sort of that mini run to cut the lead to 6, I had really some worries about the Bucks moving forward, because they didn't really close out that quarter really strongly and maintain that double-digit lead, and that evaporated quite quickly. The Celtics retook the lead. Milwaukee put some fight back, and it was a close second quarter. But then a really weird sequence happened where Giannis turned over the ball and reached for a foul, but then Marcus Smart made what's deemed as an intelligent play, but I just think it's a really weird call to make. He got 3 free throws because of this reach and foul, because he was deemed in the act of shooting, and that gave him a 5-point lead to end the half, and I thought that's not looking too good for Milwaukee, unfortunately. And in the third quarter, total avalanche. Threes were raining every which way. Jayson Tatum kept them in the game early on. He was the second leading scorer, been really efficient from outside. And wow, I mean, Tatum has had quite the start to his career. I mean, in his first year, he made it to the conference finals. His third year, he made it to the conference finals. And now in his 5th year, he's made it to the conference finals. And in the last you can say the 2 years he's definitely been deemed the true alpha number one overall player to really lead the Boston Celtics, and I've really admired his growth, especially now on the defensive end. He's been thrown the gauntlet of small forwards in terms of opposing matchups and in terms of star player especially, and clamping down on Kevin Durant in the first series, and now pretty much matching what Giannis was able to give, at least in the last two games. Jayson Tatum did struggle early on in this series. He was shooting below 40%, but in the last two games, especially game 6, when you really needed him, because if the Celtics lost, they would go home. He made such a marvelous performance. He put up 40 plus points and got pretty much everywhere he wanted to on the court, and I really admire him in this series, and I'm really excited to see what he can bring on into the conference finals for the third time in his career. Moving on to the Heat and the Sixers, this series had a little bit more of an enticing look to it once Joel Embiid got back into it. They actually did tie the series, and James Harden provided a kind of a Houston-esque performance with his Game 4 stat line, but unfortunately he wasn't able to reciprocate that for the rest of the series. In Game 5, they were routed by 30 plus points and just seemed out of sorts from the jump. Joel looked lackadaisical and sluggish. I didn't think his head was totally in the game, but again, the guy is playing with a torn thumb ligament, a broken orbital bone, just coming out of concussion protocol, so I questioned his toughness early on in his career, but hey, he won me over with his efforts. He gave it everything he had. Just wasn't in the cards. And when he did more, I felt like, than James Harden did, and Harden was the healthier player. And in Game 6, they just didn't really seem to have it either. In an elimination game on your home court, the Heat were up at least 15 points for the majority of the second half, and then some garbage time changed the final stat line to 99-90. But this game was pretty much dominated by Miami. Jimmy Butler in the third quarter has been phenomenal. He's been quite on a tear again, and he's kind of recreating that bubble magic that he had in 2020. And now looking at the Sixers offseason outlook, they are at a crossroads right now. Joel Embiid is in the prime of his career right now, and you do not want to waste that at all. And the thing is, they bet the farm on James Harden, who's clearly past his prime. He's lost that first step. He has no acceleration. Still a very good ball handler and playmaker, but you need a shot maker. And losing guys like Seth Curry was, I think, a big blow in that trade to Brooklyn. And when you look at it now, it might be the first lose-lose trade we've seen in the NBA in quite some time, especially with the amount of star power that was traded between the two teams. No team has come out truly a winner, at least with the main piece that's been attached in the trade. And now, is Philly going to offer James Harden the max contract? That's going to be the biggest thing. If I'm James Harden and I have the option to opt in to $47.4 million, whereas, yes, I could be offered the Supermax, but am I going to get it? From my perspective, if I'm Philly, I wouldn't give it to him. He hasn't proven that. But if James wants to take on money that he's definitely guaranteed, I would opt in and then play out that 1 year, hopefully come into camp in better shape, and then definitely get that Supermax in 2023's offseason. And now to preview the 2022 Eastern Conference Finals, the Miami Heat are hosting the Boston Celtics on Tuesday for Game 1, and it's a rematch of the 2020 matchup, and the two cores are virtually the same as they were in the bubble. It's quite interesting, actually. The growth that both teams had. I think the only real differences, at least for Miami, has been swapping out guys like Duncan Robinson and putting in Max Strus, really, adding in Victor Oladipo to the rotation, who's been pretty great, actually, coming back from injury late this season. And with Boston, they remain virtually unchanged. They've brought back Al Horford and added guys like Grant Williams, which is a little bit different than their 2020 campaign. But the core of Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart remains true. Ime Udoka has been a phenomenal head coach for this campaign. Definitely deserves a lot more shine. Looking at the matchups, definitely I think the overall matchups have to kind of favor the Miami Heat. They seem to be gelling very well. They didn't close out the season very well, which is kind of the opposite of Boston, where they ended up having the best record from the calendar year. But in the playoffs, Miami has been really great. They took care of the Hawks in 5 games, and yes, they stumbled a little bit, and I think, with an adjustment to Joel Embiid, that's always going to present some problems. But after that, they took care of business and won in 6 games. But it doesn't mean that Boston shouldn't be a favorite in this series either. They are the 2 seed in this conference, and they're playing really good basketball as well. They struggled with Milwaukee, albeit without Chris Middleton, but they got the job done when needed. And out of the 2 teams, definitely Jayson Tatum's going to be the best overall player. If we were to do a ranking off the top of my head, I would definitely pick Jayson Tatum first, then Jimmy Butler, and then after that, it's kind of a pick-em between the rest. But I think you'd still favor several Boston Celtics as well. But Miami does have more playoff experience. With Kyle Lowry being a former NBA champion with the Toronto Raptors, and Jimmy Butler essentially carrying Miami to the finals back in 2020. And to predict the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm going to pick the Miami Heat to beat the Celtics in 7 games, just simply because all the shooting depth that they have with Victor Oladipo, Max Strus, Tyler Hero. Just their role players seem to be deeper, have a deeper lineup, more capable shooters, and they didn't bring so many defensive problems. They can switch on so many defenders. So yes, the Celtics do have the better overall player in Jayson Tatum. I think the Miami Heat have the better team. It's a very close matchup, but I'm going to pick the Miami Heat to win in 7 games. And now to preview the West, it's going to be between the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks, and this is going to be a really fun matchup as well. I haven't seen Golden State in the conference finals in quite some time. It's been 3 years post KD. They've suffered some injuries to Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Draymond. They've all been through it, but they are all now healthy and ready to go to make another deep postseason run. And the Mavericks are on this nice, I wouldn't say a Cinderella team. They are a 4 seed, but they did just beat the top seeded Phoenix Suns on their home court on Game 7 and by a healthy margin. But these are some interesting matchups here as well. Overall, the better team is definitely going to be Golden State, but the best player at this point is definitely going to be Luka Doncic. He's provided quite inspiring performances for the Mavericks since his return from his calf injury to start the postseason. And it's going to provide a lot of problems for Golden State. The problem is, I think that Golden State just has too many defenders to throw at a guy like Luka. It's kind of similar to when Luka went up against the LA Clippers in 2021 and 2020, both in the first round, where they had multiple guys to throw at Luka, and yes, he was still able to get his baskets at will for the most part, but there still were certain games where he wasn't the most efficient, or he had a somewhat of an off night, and those were sort of the differences between winning the series and losing the series. Draymond, I feel like, could have a chance at getting some looks at Luka. They have Andrew Wiggins as well. They can deploy Klay Thompson. So they have a bevy of defenders to throw at Luka, and I think this is going to be too tall of an ask to ask guys like Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie to provide 15, 20. They're going to have to provide at least 20 points to offset the contributions of the Splash Brothers and now this newly budding star in Jordan Poole. It's still going to be a fun series, though. I mean, I'm really happy for the Mavericks. It's been a nice season for them, and they're just going to be continuing to go on the way up. But I think the road ends here, and I'm going to pick the Golden State Warriors to win in 6 games and return to the NBA Finals for the first time in 3 years. And now we're going to move on to some soccer. And wow, the Premier League race is still very much up for grabs. City was down 2-0 to West Ham after the first half. And it took a own goal to even the score, but with the chance to take the lead, unfortunately they were not able to convert a penalty, and they had to settle to share a point. And if Liverpool can pick up a win against Southampton this week, they will cut the deficit to just a single point, and that will take the matchup to the last day on next Sunday. And it really depends on how it goes. Liverpool will be going up against Wolves, and Manchester City will be going up against Aston Villa. And both teams are definitely in the mood to play spoiler for either side. And it's going to be really interesting to see which team can really pull it out. It's basically, if a team doesn't win, they're out of the Premier League title race. And it's going to be really fun matchup to see who comes out on top in this race. And now looking at the top 4 spot, Chelsea, all they need to do is just get a single point, and they have confirmed a spot in Champions League play for 2022 to 2023. Tottenham beat Arsenal 3-0, and the game was pretty much over by halftime, and it's truly a unfortunate timing for Arsenal to be taking a misstep at this juncture of the Premier League season, putting their Champions League hopes at risk right now. And they need to have a win to guarantee their spot. If they drop points, it definitely puts them at risk for losing that to Tottenham. And in the FA Cup final, we had Chelsea taking on Liverpool, which is the second time these two clubs are going head-to-head for a cup final. Just as before, the two teams were scored 0-0 at halftime, full time, and extra time, and it went into penalties. In the Carabao Cup final, it went the full lineup with both goalies taking a kick. Unfortunately for Chelsea, their goalie did miss it, and Liverpool was able to come away on top. And in the FA Cup final, it went not as deep, but Liverpool did come out on top again, and Chelsea had 2 critical misses from Captain Cesar Azpilicueta and Mason Mount, their young star. Remarkably enough, Eduard Mendy did save Sadio Mane penalty kick, which was some Senegal crime right there. Actually, they're teammates, and they'll be competing together in this World Cup, but they unfortunately were not able to take advantage of that, with Mason Mount missing a penalty kick, and Liverpool was able to come out on top. And for Chelsea, it's been another heartbreaking loss to Liverpool. They've played Liverpool quite well in Premier League action. They drew both matchups with a 1-1 draw and then a 2-2 draw, them coming back from a 2-0 deficit in the second matchup. So they're within touching distance of Liverpool. The question is, can they really close that gap next season? And it's such trying times in Chelsea. I mean, they just got new ownership. There could be sanctions on the club based on previous actions with their previous owner. Players could be leaving, the whole Lukaku controversy. We just don't know what's going to go on, but we'll see what happens with Chelsea come the off season. And that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, like and subscribe, and feel free to comment with your takes on the video or other videos on the channel. Until then, I'll see you next time.